Hello, this is Hana. Rebellion and Redemption in 2016, first quarter, lesson 3. Global Rebellion and the Patriarchs. Readers for this week's study, Genesis chapter 4, verse 1 through 15, Genesis chapter 3, 9, 10, Genesis chapter 4, 9, Genesis chapter 6, 1 through 13, Psalm 51, verse 1, Genesis 22, 1 through 19, Genesis 28, 12 through 15. Memory text, Behold, I'm with you, and will keep you wherever you go, and will bring you back to this land. For I will not leave you until I have done what I have spoken to you. Genesis chapter 28:15. The stories that follow in the four take the themes of deception and broken relationships, first seen in Eden, to a deeper level. During this time, the conflict spreads and diversifies over the globe. In the story of Cain and Abel, worship becomes the catalyst for discord and death, a recurring theme throughout history. The story of the flood reveals how rebellion and sin caused the unraveling of everything that God created. The sin not only distorts creation, it destroys it. Abraham's experience is a major encouragement in the conflict with God, demonstrating his willingness to take the consequences of rebellion upon himself. He would become our substitute. Then, in the stories of Jacob and Esau and Joseph and his brothers, we see the continuing interplay of fractured relationships, being the means that Satan uses to destroy families and people groups. Yet through it all, the faithfulness of God as he sustains and nurtures his harassed children continues. Sunday, Cain and Abel. Read Genesis chapter 4, 1 through 15. What does this tell us about how deeply ingrained the sin had become? At the birth of Cain, Eve was ecstatic. She fully believed that she had just given birth to the deliverer promised in Genesis chapter 3:15. I have acquired a man from the Lord. Genesis 4:1. The text translated literally could read, I have made the man the Lord. At its basic level, it simply reveals that Eve thought she had delivered the one whom the Lord had promised. Genesis chapter 3:15. Nothing is said of the joy of Cain's boyhood years and the nobility of new parents proudly enjoying the development of their first baby. The narrative jumps quickly to a second birth and then to the two young men worshiping. However, as we so often see, differences over worship lead to tragedy. Genesis chapter 3, 9, 10, 4, 9. Compare Adam's reaction with Cain's reaction when God questioned them after each one sinned. What is similar? What is different? Note the difference in Adam's emotions as compared with Cain's. Adam appears confused, frightened, and ashamed, Genesis 3:10, but Cain is angry, Genesis 4:5, cynical and rebellious, Genesis 4:9. Instead of offering a weak excuse as Adam did, Cain tells us a blatant untruth. However, out of the despair came a measure of hope and optimism with the birth of Seth. Eve again thinks she has delivered the promised one. Genesis chapter 4:25. The name Seth is from the word that means to place or to put, the same word used in Genesis chapter 3:15 for a deliverer who would be put in place to challenge the serpent and crush its head. In a further parallel to Genesis 3:15, Eve describes her new son as the seed to replace Abel. Thus, even amid so much despair and tragedy, and as the great controversy between good and evil continued to spread, people still clung to the hope of redemption. Without it, what do we have? Imagine the war of Adam and Eve over the death of their son, which would have been bad enough if not for the fact that another son had killed him. Thus, they lost two sons. How can we learn the hard lesson that sin has consequences far beyond the immediate sin itself? Monday, the flood. Read Genesis 6:1-13. In what ways do we see the great controversy between good and evil expressed here, only now even more intensely than before? In the flood, we see a partial reversal of the special acts of creation. Many of those things that God had separated are now brought back together. The waters above and the waters below, the sea and the dry land, the fish of the sea, the birds of the air, and all living creatures that moved on the earth, all coming together. The earth seems to move back toward being formless and empty. Genesis 1:2. Despite this apparent win by the forces of evil, God's creative genius is still at work. He initiates a new creation by again separating different elements. First, he separates Noah, a just and blameless man, from the people of the time, whose wickedness is great and whose every thought is evil, corrupt and violent. Compare Genesis 6:8-9 and Genesis 6:5-11-13. God then tasks Noah with building an enormous boat. He then separates out a small group of people, birds and animals, and puts them in the safety of the boat so that they could survive what is coming. Based on the grace of God, life will go on, and a new world will arise out of the dregs of the world. There is a new creation, but it's hardly a perfect one. Sometimes after the flood, as Noah and his family are getting themselves established again, we are reminded of the frail, frailty of human goodness. Noah becomes drunk and shameful things occur. Genesis 9 verse 20 through 27. Thus even of the heroes of faith, see Hebrew 11:7, had his bad moments. The great controversy continues not only on a massive scale but also in the hearts of individuals. The Bible describes the flood as blotting out all life. Genesis 7:4. A similar expression is used elsewhere in the Bible to describe the actions of the Redeemer in forgiving sin. Isaiah 25:8, 43:25, Psalms 51:1. Either our life is blotted out or our sins are. How does this stark reality show just how black and white the issues really are? Tuesday, Abraham, while Abraham, first called Abram, is known for his faithfulness. His life experience are more about God's faithfulness to him. Twice God has assured Abram that he would have a son. He first told him when Abram was about 75 years old, Genesis 12:2 and 4. Even then, about 10 years later, Genesis chapter 13, verse 16, God told him again. Eventually, even after much stumbling on Abram's part, the child of promise, the child of the covenant was born, and God's faithfulness to his sometimes wavering servant was revealed. See Genesis 17:19 and 21, Genesis 21 through 3 through 5. Read Genesis 22:1 through 19. What hope is revealed here in regard to the whole great controversy? It was to impress Abram's mind with the reality of the gospel, as well as to test his faith that God commanded him to slay his son. The agony which he endured during the dark days of that fearful trial was permitted that he might understand from his own experience something of the greatness of the sacrifice made by the infinite God for man's redemption. No other test could have caused Abram such torture of soul as did the offering of his son. God gave his son to a death of an agony of shame. The angels who witnessed the humiliation and sore anguish of the Son of God were not permitted to interpose as in the case of Isaac. There was no voice to cry, "It is enough," to save the fallen race. The King of Glory yielded up his life. What stronger proof can be given of the infinite compassion and love of God? He that spared not his own son, but delivered him up for us all, how shall he not with him also freely give us all things? Romans chapter 8, verse 32. The sacrifice required of Abram was not alone for his own good, nor solely for the benefit of succeeding generations, but it was also for the instruction of the sinless intelligence of heaven and of other worlds. The field of the controversy between Christ and Satan The field on which the plan of redemption is wrought out is